Hey everybody, it is Love and Relo, the voice of the relocation industry. I am your host, Ben Cross, on this lovely Tuesday, March 24th here, coming to you live here in Detroit. I've got some great folks coming on today. We've got some of the brightest minds in the real estate business coming on, joining us, giving us an update from the field on COVID-19, how it's impacting real estate and relocation. I've got folks from New York, Oregon, Colorado, Michigan. It's going to be quite a great show. I'm pretty excited about it. We want to answer your questions. So if you are a relocation professional, if you're just curious, if you're a real estate professional and want to understand, the relocation side of the business, I would love for you to ask questions. Let us know what you're seeing, what you're wondering. We're going to go to our group of experts. And today we've got 4 experts with us. We've got Ryan Watroba, Senior Vice President, Relocation, Coldwell Banker, Prime Properties from Albany, New York. I've got David Sherrin, Director of Relocation, ERA Reardon Realty in Kalamazoo, Michigan, and throughout Western Michigan. I've got Tim Nowak, Relocation Director, Perry & Company from Denver, Colorado. And hopefully joining us will also be Barry Matheny, Vice President of Relocation at John L. Scott Real Estate in Portland, Oregon. So pretty esteemed panel. I'm going to bring them on here and say hey to them. Let's see. Let's start with David Sherrin out there. David, how you doing?
Hey, good, Ben. How are you?
I'm making it, man. Just getting by. And you're in Kalamazoo. How are things on the west side of the state?
In Kalamazoo, things are pretty quiet here right now, but real estate is still moving along as we hope that it will throughout this.
Yeah. Let's bring on another one of our guests here, Ryan Watroba, upstate New York. How's it going, Ryan?
Hey, doing well. Thanks for having me, Ben. I appreciate it. Good to see you, David.
Good to see you, Ryan.
Yeah, and let's see. Let's bring on one more guest here. We got Tim Nowak from Denver. Hey, Tim, how you doing?
Hey, Ben, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me back. How are you?
I'm fantastic. All things considered, I'm doing really, really well. I think right now, we're about as good as we can, is doing what we can do here. But I think, in my opinion, it's really about protecting our mindset kind of and staying positive and staying engaged with one another and our community. And this is kind of why I'm so excited to have all of you here right now, talking to us a little bit about relocation and real estate and what you're seeing out there. Also, before we jump in with our guests, and we're going to do that really shortly, I want you also to, if you're on LinkedIn, please go ahead and check in. Let me know where you're coming to us from, where you're watching this, what city, state, country you're in. We get a lot of overseas folks. Love hearing the updates from overseas. If you're on Facebook, drop a comment, leave a question. Love to hear from you as well on the book. So I kind of want to just throw something out there to all of you. In the last 2 weeks, it feels like our world has kind of changed, right? What is the impact that you're seeing in your area there locally? Tim, I'm going to start with you out in Denver. What are you seeing? Just
Ben, we're seeing a lot of different things. Denver's a market that is pretty active at all times of year. We have now it's starting the spring market. So we have a lot of transactions that are closing as it is the beginning of the springtime, but we also have a lot of buyers and sellers looking to start their relocations. So it's a little bit of a challenge because, you're trying to watch, what your governor and what your mayor are dictating in terms of, social distancing and things like that, but then also being there for your clients as well. So you're really dealing with many different things. And then I don't know if this is the right time to mention it, but even when it gets down to closing, handling documents and commission checks and things like that, limiting, doing things electronically as much as possible, so that you don't have, many sets of hands touching the same documents within just a short amount of time. So there's really a lot going on right now, but also being there, being present for those that still want to continue their home sale or home purchase journey with us as this continues. And then also being a friendly face for those that want to hold off until this is over, but really need that warm hand.
So you've touched on a lot of things there, and there's a few of these I do want to say till later as far as like how we're using technology and stuff. But let me ask you this.
Sure.
What is the current state of affairs in your state right now? What type of restrictions are you under in Colorado?
Sure. So our mayor yesterday has issued a shelter-in-place order beginning at 5 p.m. Mountain Time today. So in just a couple of hours, that will start. That means only business that's non-essential or only essential business should be taking place. That means going to a grocery store, doctor, pharmacy, things like that. However, real estate was deemed to be an essential business, so we're able to still move forward. But that's where we're at right now. The governor has not issued a shelter in place outside of the Denver metro area. So really the shelter in place is just for our metro at this time.
And now, Ryan, let me kind of kick it over to you and ask the same question. What is the current state of affairs in your state, in your region, and are you essential?
So yeah, I mean, obviously, as Tim mentioned, and you've been mentioning in the various broadcasts, I mean, it's a fluid situation. So actually, Sunday evening at 8 o'clock, New York State was placed under a state of emergency. With that, anyone that was deemed non-essential was had to work from home and was no longer allowed to do business in person. Real estate was deemed a non-essential underneath that category. So we have fully transitioned to a 100% remote work environment for all of our agents, for all of our offices. So offices are closed, can't do in-person open houses, showings, things of that nature. Before this order was put in place, we had begun to really move quickly in transitioning to a virtual workplace, starting as early as last Monday. But certainly we are continuing to carry on with our business, but just in a 100% virtual setting at this point.
So I'm sorry, Tim, did you say you were non-essential or essential?
We are considered essential in our market.
So in Colorado and Denver, real estate is essential. In New York, it's deemed non-essential. That's interesting. So it's really state by state. Yeah. I was kind of under the impression, I guess, that a lot of states were following a lot of the same guidelines, but I mean, that's interesting nuance there. And David, in your region, what are you seeing as far as restrictions?
So as far as restrictions, Michigan did enter into a shelter in place as ordered by Governor Whitmer as of this morning. And real estate is still kind of up in the air. We're waiting for Michigan realtors to provide some guidance to the industry throughout the state to make that determination of how they interpret the order from Governor Whitmer. Okay, so you're waiting for your state association to kind of make that determination. So because what I've seen a lot of times from guides, and I'll tell you from a mover standpoint, in most states, transportation has been deemed essential, and then moving kind of falls under that. And in some cases, they delineate transportation and relocation services are essential. And so, we kind of dovetail in that way. But it's interesting to see. So we have Tim in Colorado that says, we are deemed essential, and we're under shelter in place, but we're deemed essential. New York is shelter in place. Real estate is deemed not essential. And then in Michigan, shelter in place, but not sure yet. So let me go into the next thing. And Tim kind of started to talk about this, but, with these restrictions, and I'll start with you, Ryan, because you are in a virtual environment now at this point. Yep. How are you conducting business in a virtual environment?
Yeah, so I mean, one of the big things that we've talked with our agents about, and we've communicated with all of our partners, is there are certain activities that we that are temporarily suspended. So open houses, meeting in person for showings. We've gone completely to that virtual environment, as you said. So now it's virtual showings. It's the showing material that's out there. Our agents are still working to develop buying and selling strategies with our clients. They're staying in touch with their clients. They're still moving them through this process. And, as David kind of alluded, he's looking to his state agency of realtors. We are as well. We're following very closely with NYSAR and NAR for direction. And, the biggest thing right now is communicate with your clients, stay engaged, and utilize all the tools and resources that you have available to you. At our company, we've been very fortunate that we have had all of these tools and resources even before COVID-19. So this is really just forcing our agents and our whole team to better leverage these technologies to provide innovative solutions to their clients.
David, what are some of the things that you're doing in this type of environment? I know it's kind of a new order that came out for us. I think it was effective yesterday. So this is our first real day in Michigan under shelter in place. How has it impacted your folks?
So, to echo what Ryan just mentioned, we're looking to technology to provide our agents with an opportunity to continuously stay in front of the client, to be that calming voice relative to the state of the industry to the client, and asking our agents to move outside of their comfort zone. I mean, let's face it. I mean, not all real estate practitioners have been completely comfortable with the technology. Now we're pushing them into that arena, and I think they'll definitely they'll thrive, and this will be a benefit to them at the end.
Well, I think, a lot of us are in this situation. I was actually just talking to the president of an RMC a couple hours ago, and they were telling me about this type of a transition as their state went into shelter in place, and figuring out how to allow people to work from home, and you have technology issues, you have culture issues, you have, frankly, training issues with the technology in some cases. Those of you who work with a lot of agents in your market, how have you helped them to be able to do this effectively, whether it be technology? I mean, what are some of the ways that you've overcome some of those challenges and challenges you've seen and ways you've overcome those? David, let's start with you and go back around the horn there.
Absolutely. So, we've discovered that the challenges for the agents have been, more or less limited to their ability to maybe utilize some of the tools. Like Brian mentioned, we've had these in place for a while. It's just a matter of utilization. And when we take for granted the constant opportunity to be face-to-face with the client, we don't necessarily have to utilize that technology. Now they're being put into a position where it is absolutely necessary, and quite frankly, it's necessary for their survival and their continuity throughout this current state.
Well, I mean, right, and that's the way it is. Adapt, and you have to adapt in order to survive. And I think we're seeing that, as well. Ryan.
Yeah, so I mean, when we made the transition, we certainly leaned on our IT part of the organization. I mean, we have a fully service help desk, things of that nature. Certainly call volume and stuff went up there, but they're doing a great job with it. And the other thing is we made sure that all of the on-demand training that we already had available was front and center with our organization. So we have had a steady stream of communication from our brokerage leadership, very poignant information related to topics, things they can do, they can't do, looking at the technology. And then we very quickly, our whole learning team rolled out a whole series of webinars and things of that nature that started today in a series of different things, everything from, our electronic document management to, hey, how do you leverage things like social media and things of that nature. And I think the other thing that I've been telling folks when I talk to them is, we don't have to reinvent the wheel here. I mean, there are tools and resources that people use every day to communicate with their family, things such as just FaceTime that, you could certainly utilize in working with a client. You don't have to, if you don't know how to use Zoom or WebEx, utilize the technologies that you have available to you that you're comfortable with.
Well, you mentioned things they can do and things they can't do as you're sending out these informational pieces. Yep. What are some of the things that they can't do anymore that they used to maybe do?
Yes, I mean they can't do is it's those in-person activities. So it is, going to meet a client in person to walk through a listing agreement or something to that degree. How are they doing that now? Their ability to do that via video conferencing and leveraging our digital transaction management systems, things that they already know how to do. So sometimes, as David mentioned, just being that as our agents are calming to their clients, we as leaders need to be calming to our agents that they can do this and help them through it. Not holding open houses. It's really all of those in-person activities that they're now limited to temporarily as we go through this state of emergency.
Tim, I'll allow you to answer the same question. I mean, how are you guys working through some of those challenges specifically?
Sure. Very similar. You know, it's coming down to using that FaceTime, that Zoom, that WebEx to really interface with your client online. We're a member of leading real estate companies of the world, so they've provided some great tools and training as well to be done virtually. But really, it's just about maintaining that relationship at the client's comfort level, of course. You know, since real estate is deemed essential, people can still look at properties in person as long as they practice the appropriate social distancing. While we do encourage it to be virtual, you know, that has been fine as well. Our contracts are all handled electronically, so anything that needs to be done contractually was already online. So there's not really a huge change to that. In addition, at Perry & Company, we have a great support team. So each agent you know, works with myself in relocation if they're on the team, but also has a assigned transaction manager, which can help them with a lot of the behind scenes work as well. So really, I would just have to say, you know, maybe using that, you know, those video tools to be able to communicate face to face. You know, don't underestimate the power of something handwritten in the mail, especially during times like these. It's more of a passive approach to communication, but I think a lot more people are hitting that FaceTime and the phone calls for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you know, and I see we got some comments here. We got some questions. We also got somebody backstage here as well. I'm like peeking back in the green room over there. No, but but you mentioned though virtual tours, but I gotta think, like, if I'm gonna buy a, you know, a $500,000 house, I'm gonna see that thing before I buy it, you know, and maybe I'm just old school. Maybe I'm just, you know, whatever, not with the times, but, you know, maybe a virtual tour or two sounds great. But I mean, before I put my virtual signature on a virtual document, I'm going to want to, and spend real money, I'm going to want to probably see that place. I mean, are you seeing that? And is that still possible? Tim, you mentioned that it sounds like it is possible in your area, but, you know, David, Ryan, is that possible where you're at?
You know, I think well, I mean, in the current state, you know, really, if you were to do a virtual tour, you'd have to be very, very creative and walk your client now through assisting you with getting that video, because you're not allowed to do an in-person video. But I think, you know, one of the things is, and, you know, you've touched upon this in your broadcast, you see it in the news. I mean, these are unprecedented times and things are changing so quickly. So to your point, Ben, yeah, right now, someone may not purchase that big property rate solely by virtual tour, but I think it's a tool that continues to allow us to enable the conversation and keep that conversation going. And I think when there's so much craziness going on, you know, giving your clients an opportunity to focus their efforts in a place that's not, you know, what's my latest thing on social media, what's the latest talking head saying. So I think we just need to be very resourceful right now. And again, this is obviously changing on a daily basis.
David, did you want to say anything about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, so we have at ERA Reardon, we have provided our agents with some guidance on, you know, ensuring that the buyer is protected and the buyer can still move forward with, you know, in essence, a sight unseen, and provide that there is a contingency that that they will only move forward at the time that they are able to view the property in person and really, you know, to your point, you know, set their eyes on it before they fully commit and start executing the conditions of the contract.
Now we've got I've got Barry Matheny here coming on board here to join. So Barry, you're backstage. Let's bring all Barry out here. All right, Barry.
There you go, guys.
Hey, Barry.
How's everybody doing?
Hey, Barry.
Good, man. Good. Hey, lean the other way, brother. Lean the other way there for me.
Well, like, okay,
There
I can
you
do
go.
it. There it is.
Hey.
Okay, you got to help this old guy figure this out.
Hey, I appreciate you coming out, Barry. Thank you so much.
I'm more than welcome. You're welcome, Ben. How I've been listening to some of the comments from some of my buddies, and yeah, Washington just as yesterday went into the shelter at home thing for the next 2 weeks. Is how it's looking right now. Obviously, we have been sending out communication on a regular basis. It seems like it's never stopping. I don't know how everybody else feels, but we are just being overwhelmed. And that's where the real opportunity comes, is you can only take it one step at a time. You got to be really careful. You don't let your mindset go in another direction. So the most important thing right now for us is to be responsive where we can be, as soon as we can be, but at the same time, make sure that we're not overstating the obvious and trying to be something that we're not. And there are a lot of different types of experts out there today that are indicating all types of different things. And with social media today, obviously, it's created some anxiety. Every time you read something, you got to be really careful about what the intent of that communication was all about. And I think this is a time for us to be secure, in place, knowing what our steps are and knowing that those steps can change. Seattle right now, I don't know if this is I'll just jump in. You tell me when to shut up, Ben, and
I can't get a word in, Barry.
There it is, then. I'll slow it down. All right, you go ahead and you go ahead and ask your questions.
Well, Barry, before we go too far, Barry, first of all, I apologize. I reported you're from Portland and you're from Seattle. So first of all, I apologize to you. Okay.
No, that's okay.
Now,
it's okay.
Now, I also have a couple of comments coming in here, and I want to go ahead and I want to honor those comments. And I think we had a couple of questions as well. Now, for my panelists who are on right now, can you take out your phones? Okay, I'm going to ask you to do something on the fly here. All right. Now, Tim, don't touch your phone. Forgot to say, don't touch your. But the rest of you, take out your phones, because LinkedIn right now did not send this notification to everybody, so we only have, I don't know, half dozen people on right now. So just go ahead and leave a like and a comment or even a share. Find this post while I read some of these questions and put it out there and share it so that people actually know we're doing this. So I want people to actually get the benefit of asking their questions to you live. Okay. And if you need to, you can go to my profile to find the post and then go ahead and share it. And then that way, at least it can get out. There we go. I'm seeing some people coming on. There's Vinny Valverde. Hey, Barry and Tim, looking great, guys. There we go. All right. So we'll go.
Hey, Vinny.
Let's go through our LinkedIn messages first. Then we got some questions over here in the book. Mark Must, Love and Relo from Switzerland. Hey, Mark. Let's see here. Michael Quigley, real estate, digital signatures is a question. Notary thumbprint. He's asking about notary thumbprints. What are we doing about that? Is that a thing? I don't even know if that's. What does he mean? Do we know what Michael Quigley means? Anybody know what notary thumbprint means?
So with that too, I mean, what we're doing is we're getting continual guidance from our state and local boards, and also being part of the Coldwell Banker family from Realty as well, about the acceptance that's going to be allowed in terms of digital signatures and things of that nature. So that's ever evolving, and we continue to watch that on a daily basis.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the same thing from us here too. I think that is an interesting question, Michael. Thank you for asking it. I think we are taking good direction from what we can do here in the state, and as far as John F. Scott, it's impacting Oregon as well as Idaho and parts of California that we all are part of. But I think the most important thing that is the clear communication about how that is really being implemented. I think it's pretty consistent across the board into what we can and cannot do. And I think that that's the most important thing, is just pay attention to what you're probably reading and seeing out there. You can rest assured that we're all trying to follow those mandates as we move forward.
Anybody else have anything to add on that before we move on to the next topic here? All right. Vinny Valverde, cheers, everyone. Again, reassuring Barry and Tim, looking great. Going over here, we got Jack Jampel chiming in on Facebook. Hey, Jack, love to see you watching there. He did have a question for us. Have you found any technological ideas that you will continue once back to normal? And before we proceed with that, whoever's watching the video still, put that on mute, okay? I hear enough of myself. Just kidding. Can't get enough. No, but seriously, Jack Jampel, have you found any technological ideas that you will continue once back to normal? I'm going to start with Tim.
I think the virtual tours, or at least an introductory virtual meeting is always nice. Being able to utilize those services, and also, we do handle our contracts electronically here, so keeping that in place and handling all payments electronically has been nice as well. So I think those are things that we'll try and keep in place. But one thing that I'd like to point out is just really thorough communication, whether it's electronic, verbal, in person. When you're not face to face all the time, you really have to make sure that your client is being reached in the way they want to. So I think continuing that, because as I think we've talked about before, Ben, clients want to be reached in the way and the time that they want to be reached. So some people don't want face-to-face communication, some people do. So I think really making sure that you're catering to your clients and their needs will of course be something that's continued.
So communication is a really broad thing. Can you give me something specifically, or something maybe somebody is watching can actually take away also and say, what is this specific technique, or maybe it's a system,
Sure.
or maybe it's a program or something like that we've adopted that you can see sticking around?
Like the virtual tea time, the virtual happy hours, things like that a lot of people are doing now. When a big thing, at least in real estate for my team, is when they meet a client for the first time, a lot of times they'll start with a coffee meeting, or a lunch meeting or a happy hour meeting. And now those are having to be done virtually. And, to be quite honest, sometimes people's schedules don't allow for those face-to-face meetings. So being able to continue to do those virtually is if needed. But again, it's challenging, Ben, because real estate is such a people business. So you want to make sure that stays front and center.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. I like that idea though about the virtual hangouts and things like that.
Yeah.
We'll be doing our first one tomorrow, which I look forward to seeing you at, Tim. And then we'll be doing more.
Absolutely.
For anybody that's watching this now, we'll be doing a Love and Relo happy hour. I just cleared it with my wife, and by cleared it with her, I'm still arguing with her about it. But we're doing one on Friday, and I'm doing one for each time zone, because Vinny told me, hey, 4:30 Eastern is awful early for us to kind of tie one on out here in Oregon. So if you wouldn't mind. So we're going to do one for each time zone. So by the end of it, I should be in a really, really good spirits. David, I'm going to ask you the same question. David, Sherrin, what type of technological ideas have you started to kind of flirt with or adopt now that you think you're going to stick with potentially long term?
So, I think if I could echo what Tim mentioned about the buyer consultations and that initial meeting of, helping the client, helping the transferee set some expectations up front. Here's what here's how the market's performing as it relates to what you're looking for. Here's what, our contract looks like, really kind of going through from soup to nuts, everything that they will encounter throughout that transaction, so that when they are ready to move forward, there's no question about how to proceed or what they would need to do to proceed. It's you've already had an opportunity to view the purchase agreement. You have an opportunity to understand the process. So when it's time to move in a market with limited supply, you can move very, very quickly.
Now, is that something where they are doing like a go-to meeting and they're sharing their screen to look at the document, or how are they going through the purchase agreement together but remotely?
So we encourage them to send the purchase agreement to the client, through another means, through email or get it to them some other way. And then, throughout that consultation, they can offer the client an opportunity to address any questions that they may have encountered, after reviewing the purchase agreement.
Okay. All right. Makes sense. Barry, I'm going to ask you that. What kinds of technological, advances are you guys implementing now that you think might actually stick around or might be something you do long term?
Well, let me address it a couple different ways, if you guys don't mind. I promise I won't get.
Sure.
But I think a great time for learning. I think sometimes when we go through challenges like this, the tools that you have that are not always implemented right away by agents, because there's so much out there for them to learn and so much out there for them to do what they do, that I think this is a very important time for them to educate themselves on all the different opportunities they have. And our company, like all of us on this call, have different ways of doing business, but at the same time, the same way, because the most important thing that we can do is provide that good customer experience. So for us, video has become a very important ingredient in communicating in so many different ways. I think some of the technology that we're using today, like Matterport, virtual tours, things of that nature, stuff that we have been using over time, I think is going to help some of our agents who have been less tech savvy initially, but are now beginning. And not that that's a bad thing, because many of those agents are very good at building relationships, like we all know that is important, and that face-to-face time is still important. And I think those are some of the tools that we're using, not only through Boom Boom video or through technology that we have here that we're using, but also through FaceTime that we can use to talk directly to the client, whether it be through Zoom or any of those other tools that I think are important to help them walk through the process. I think the most important thing right now is to take that technology and not lose control of the relationship along the way. I think the relationship still remains intact. They have to have confidence in you, and it's just not an easy handoff, say go here or go there. I think digital mechanisms are important. I think this is the perfect time for, and I heard it today on the Lead RE conference webinar that I was on, that one of the things that's very critical right now for our agents to do is to reconnect the dots with their database, and to make sure that they're staying connected and they're doing the things that they need to do to reinforce their value, even though they can't be there with them in person, and guide them to certain things that they can do to uncover some of the need that they have. I think we're going to take away, Ben, a lot of stuff that will be continuous, I think, but at the same time, I think the learning here is to be more proficient, utilize the tools that are available to you. And if you're uncomfortable with what those are, ask for help, and don't be afraid to get on LinkedIn. Like I was thinking, oh gosh, am I going to be able to pull this off for Ben or what? And here I am, guys. Think about that for a minute.
You did it, Barry. You did it. Now let me ask you. Let me stop you here and ask you, Barry, because we've got several generations represented here,
right?
And let me ask you: do you think that attitudes are changing towards technology and the way that we're using it in lieu of some of the in-person stuff, and specifically for folks of your generation? I mean, do you see the widespread adoption of the FaceTime and the virtual tours and things like that, or do you see resistance from that?
I think, wow, that's a big, broad statement. Let me answer it this way.
It was a question. It was a question.
Yeah, but I'm going to answer it this way, though. Yes, I think you see both of those. I think that the resistance comes, and I'll speak for myself, not so much from a resistance standpoint, because I think the reason that I keep doing what I'm doing is to learn from people like that's on this call today, is to make sure that we don't lose sight of what, as the world turns, what part of that do we play a role in? What is my responsibility to adapt? What am I doing in my generation to be proficient, but at the same time be educating those in other generations as to what is still important? Relationships are still important. It doesn't take anything to write a card. It doesn't take anything to say to somebody you care about them. That's why I think that the video today is important. I think you can get a sense from me, the sincerity. I think with the level of uncertainty that is out there today, people need to relate to us. I think we can do that just like we're doing right now. And I think we can show through our actions how we are speaking, how we create the conversation, what that means to us by generating that confidence. I think it's still important to be able to reach out to our clients. I think one of the challenges today that we're seeing in our area now, the built up demand here obviously is still there. The market is still moving. We're seeing some growth over the same time frame last month, same date through yesterday. We still see an increase in for sale and pending and things of that nature. However, I think we also have some challenges with people now beginning to kind of pull back a little bit. I think this is a time for our companies we do business with, our partners, to see us as proactive, not sitting back waiting for somebody else to do it for us, but to be in sync with those that are doing things and to learn from those things. So my message to any generation is to never lose sight of who your customer is. Always understand the value of the role you play, and regardless of how you play it, be the best you can at it. And that's the way I look at it.
All right. I love it. I love it. Ryan, I want to give you an opportunity to weigh in on this as well, as about what technological advances do you think might stick around long term, really quickly, and then we got some other questions as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think I agree with everything that's been said here. I mean, what I'd say is that as an organization, we have not had to go out and get any brand new technological ideas. We're utilizing what we already have. I think that at the end of the day, it is always still, it's a people-centered business. We're there to help people make good real estate decisions. Everybody has a different decision that they need to make based upon where they're at in their life. And I think what we are going to learn from this, in addition to what has already been said by the rest of the panel, is when something is taken away from us that we may have taken for granted, like that in-person meeting or the ability to just, I'm going to go take care of this business task. You have to be innovative. You have to be creative. And I hope that is the idea that sticks out of this, is that we learn, and for the folks that are using these technological ideas, that you're learning that it's another area to hold within your toolbox to solve a problem or to work with a unique situation, because we are all in this together. We're all doing real estate. There are so many things that are similar, but we can never forget that each individual person, their situation is just a little bit different. We may have to take a different approach to it. So,
I think you're right. I think what I'm hearing is that things like video are augmenting relationship building and not replacing relationship building. And I think that's a key, right? We think about technology. Oh, these kids these days are just on their screen time all the time, right? Well, and they're not out in the real world. It's like, well, but we bring the real world, which is where we're all sitting right now, onto the screen so that we can interface right now. And I can have these conversations across, 3 time zones right now. And I think that's pretty cool. And conversely, or, at the same time, you have people that are watching this that are able to tap in now to all the knowledge that y'all have. I have a practical question here from Facebook, and this is one that's actually been on my mind. And I'd like to actually, this is Janet Turner saying, how are home inspections being handled? And I'd actually like to piggyback on this question. How are home inspections being handled? And also, how are home appraisals being handled? Is it different? Is it the same? Is it market by market? And I'm going to ask Tim. We haven't heard from you in a minute. Tim, what's going on in Colorado as it pertains to home inspections and home appraisals?
Sure. Since real estate has been deemed an essential business, as long as social distancing is followed, the inspections and appraisals are handled as normal. A lot of times it may just be, an inspector and an agent and a client in a home. So there's usually enough room for everybody to have their appropriate distancing. But right now that is handled as normal.
Okay, now that's interesting because you kind of couch that in because we're deemed essential. Now let me go to, let's say, New York, right, and talk to Ryan. And Ryan, how are home inspections and appraisals being handled in New York, and is it impacted by the different classification of essential versus non-essential?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good question, and those are things that we're continuing to work through because of this more or less state of emergency that went into effect on Sunday evening, and
Mm-hmm.
it's ever changing. So some of the information that we were shared with yesterday from NYSAR was that there were some exemptions that were being made by the governor's office for folks that were sole proprietors that could fall into a home inspector, an appraiser. Obviously social distancing is very important there. So again, there's still some more clarifications that need to come out related to this whole essential versus non-essential.
Yeah. Let me ask David the same question. David, here in my state of Michigan, what are we seeing as far as home inspections and home appraisals?
So as far as home inspections, we are watching the situation very closely with Michigan Realtors. However, appraisals and other settlement services, including title, are considered to be part of the financial or insurance type services that are permissible under the current situation in Michigan.
It's interesting. I see Barry chomping at the bit. Barry, I'll get to you in 1 second there. But it's interesting to see all these companies starting to kind of like, okay, am I falling under this? Do I fall under that? And they're kind of jockeying, and they're like, how do I make sure that we stay essential, right? It's like, it's interesting. There's a lot of gray area and there's a lot of interpretation. And frankly, there's probably not a lot of enforcement right now because there's so many companies that are classifying themselves at this time because it's gray. Barry, going out to you out there on the West Coast, what's going on?
As we went through this yesterday, when the announcement was made, I'm in agreement. We had 48 hours. They gave businesses that were non-essential 48 hours. In our particular case, real estate is a non-essential business, as well as appraisals, as well as inspections. So it's an interesting dynamic because that's created some interesting conversation around that they are doing a review to make sure that if we're still able to work with buyers and potentially sellers through the virtual world, so to speak, in a temporary basis, how come we cannot do the same thing in some of the other areas that are impacted and are helping those homes? The financial industry obviously is considered an essential side of the business. I think the biggest challenge right now is the interpretation of the information that many of us are just now reacting to, and I think that's probably creating some level of uncertainty. But I do believe, Ben, that what I think is going to happen is they're going to have to go back. I think that 48-hour window was to give people some time to kind of ask some of their questions, to get some interpretation of what exactly they can or cannot do, instead of just closing the doors and forgetting about those people that are already currently under contract and still need to have all those services done. How do you get past that? Do you just keep delaying it until we get past this 2-week window that we're working under right now?
Right.
I think it remains to be seen. I think there'll be more information going out on that. But I just think like in New York and some of the other Chicago and some of the other parts of the country where it's kind of shut down, so to speak, I think it's going to take a little while to determine, and I think it's going to take some experiences. I know on the financial side and how commissions are being done and how things are being done on the bigger picture, you can do a lot of stuff online and wiring transfers and things of this nature. But inspecting a home, I think you can do. I think one of the other things you may see with the appraisals is more dry type of stuff. I think you'll see more BMAs where you can go in, and because they have access to MLS, they can go in and take a look at the comps that are sitting out there, which they do today.
Explain those processes for our corporate mobility people that are watching this, and they're interested in the mechanics of how that might work. Can you explain those two types of alternatives?
Yeah, well, you talk about the comps, and you talk about the BMA, what I was just referring to.
And you mentioned and cut out when you said it, but I think you said a drive-by appraisal.
Yeah, yeah.
Explain a little bit more.
Yeah, and now in some cases on the appraisal side, and I know that some of our RMC companies that are on the LinkedIn here is that in today's world, you don't always have to go into the house depending on the type of appraisal that you're doing. It may be a refi. It may not need all that activity. I think from the broker market analysis report that we do, the things that we do from a real estate standpoint, the things that are important to us is what is the most likely sales price of that home. That's what the RMCs and their counselors are looking at. And they're going to be even looking at them a lot closer today, just based on the fact of the conditions of the environment and what psychologically that's going to have an impact on how people perceive value and things of that nature. However, I do believe that they can utilize appraisers today have access in our area to the MLS. They can go in and they can take a look at a neighborhood that home is sitting in, and they can do a comps based on what it's sold in the last 30 days or 60 days or whatever be the case. They can also take a look at what currently is on the market and get some comparison based on price points. That's all they can do today. If they are,
is that enough though? Is that enough to close on? Is that enough to close on a home though?
I think that when we in the real estate side of the business are going out, I'll just use real estate as an example. I don't think on an inspection stand. Let me back up. I don't think on an inspection, and I'm giving you just my professional opinion. I think there's where the challenge falls is the inspection side of the business could be a real challenge, because usually people want to really see what's going on with those homes, if there's any conditions in there that they want to have repaired or whatever be the case. So for me on that scenario, I think that that's going to be an interesting challenge. And I think that in itself is going to create some opportunity unless that particular profession is considered essential to getting that home to market or getting that home closed. And I think those are determinations that have to take place. If I'm looking at the comps and I'm looking at the things that are currently out there on the market today, I think that's what we use today for our BMAs when we're on the real estate side. That's the type of information that we're sending out. Now, the challenge with that is obviously you need to have conversation with that client who is selling that home. You need to get a real good sense of what type of repairs may need to be done. How do you bring that house to market? I think that's where the video comes in. That's where the FaceTime, where maybe the homeowner does their own type of inspection, or better yet, maybe their visual.
Yeah, but to your point earlier, though, Barry, I mean, that's not going to tell me if there's water behind that wall.
I totally agree.
Or the things that keep me up at night that make me, crap, I bought this house and I got to do $40,000 of, necessary repairs.
And I think there has to be a rider in there, Ben. I can't speak to the laws because I'm not one of those guys. I'd have to revert back to somebody that knows more than I do. But if I'm thinking about it logically, I think there has to be conditions that come with that. I think that those things may put the delay of the sale of the home off for a while. I think you can do the basics, like I said, with the comps in homes that are sold, but I do not think that you can close all the gaps on areas that people are not able to see.
Right.
And that would be, and that's just my opinion. I think they're going to come back with some resolution on some of this stuff, but you still got to have people comfortable with you coming into their home. And so there's a lot of things that we don't know, because if you give me permission, i.e. in Denver, as Tim was talking about, they haven't gone into that complete lockdown yet, so to speak. You were able to do some of that stuff. But once you get into the phase where you're down, you got to be really creative as to what are the conditions to get this home to market ready, and what can we do under the current environment to help us get there. And if you can't get there, then you have to delay those things that are wait and see down the road.
Guys, I want to ask you as well. What are you thinking about what Barry's saying?
Yeah, and I absolutely, I think that there are ways that, you're talking, Barry, about the broker market analysis. And if that is something that needs to be done right now, if it's been deemed essential by the employee, by the relocation management company, we have ways, we have tools and resources, we can work together to get that done. I think the other key thing with all of this is, and the uniqueness of this situation, is that it's not just one industry. We're all in this together.
Right on.
When we're talking right now, I mean, we almost have to talk in 14 to 30-day increments.
Right
And
on.
say, so to your point, Ben, it's like, hey, all those different factors that come up when you purchase real estate. I mean, this is a process that takes more than 14 to 30 days. So we have to talk what we can do right now and being a resourceful industry. But I think that it's ever changing. If we had this conversation 3 days from now, we're probably going to have different points related to new things that have come out.
Let me ask you this. So Barry, you paint a picture now, and this is a question for all of you. You paint a picture where we can't really necessarily get inspections done, or there's some obvious challenges, which then creates enough doubt, that frankly people aren't probably going to close on homes. Tell me a story. Okay, we do story time here. Okay, tell me a story where the housing market doesn't take a complete dump over the next 3 months.
Wow. Are you wanting us?
This is not just for Barry, so don't think the rest
Are you?
I see Dave sitting back. Barry, answer this question.
Yeah, I think a lot of. I think the story has to be honest. I think people have to be informed. I think people cannot put their heads in the sand and disappear. I think we have to do a really good job from a communication standpoint, even though it just pains us every 10 minutes to make another prediction somewhere. And I'm using that loosely. I think we have to maintain professionalism and create confidence in those people that we're working with, that we're in it with them. I think we have to be more dependent and break down the barriers of who does what. I totally agree with what Ryan said. This is the time to come together as an industry. This is the time to tell the story the same way. That it's that what you read is what you have to be careful of. What people are saying is that this market, the spring market's going to be the spring market in June and July, so to speak. That's where the future is going. And I have no reason to doubt that we can't get there. I think based on what National NAR is saying and what the economists are saying is that if we can get this time in place, organized to a point that we can move forward with confidence, that we'll see people still wanting to, but there is such a huge built up demand for people to buy homes in the marketplace today. And in those more affordable price ranges, there are people in line waiting to get to that house to buy it. And what we have to do is keep conveying our confidence that the market is not going to shift into the tank, that we're doing everything we can as an industry to drive it forward with confidence. And we believe that we'll turn this corner. Now, we can't control the destiny of all the other stuff going on around us, but we can damn sure have a good impact on the things that we can control. And that's the way we communicate.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think, to Barry, what you said, that, there's a lot of information out there. There's people that are a lot smarter than I and are in a lot bigger positions than I in the real estate industry that talk about that this is not like anything that we've gone through before. So I think when we are faced with any sort of opposition, we always want to go and compare and say, hey, what happened this year? What happened then? It's unprecedented. And I think we can control right now what we need to control, what we can control. And I would also say that, there's a lot of factors in the market that were still really strong before we started this. And I think the other piece that I would say, and I look at my own company and we cover a wide area in upstate New York, and even from community to community, it's very different. So it's that old adage of, real estate is local. And I don't say that to because of the cliche, but I think every market's going to continue to be different because every market is being impacted a little bit differently in their communities with what we're all working through right now. I think there's a lot of strong factors that still show that the market is very strong. And as I said before, we need to continue to give confidence to those people that we're already working with. For those new folks that come into the process, we need to work with them in the current environment that we have. And I do think that you're seeing it within some of the politicians as well, that they're already starting to talk about ways to adapt to get the economy back going. So I think there may be some things that we can't even discuss today because it would be purely speculation about some of those factors in the real estate transaction that would continue to go forward.
Right.
What other, David and Tim, what other types of factors are you seeing that might give you some cause for optimism, let's say?
Well, look, the spring is a busy time of year, right? Those people that were interested, as Barry said, when the floodgates open, if you maintain the relationship correctly with honesty and integrity and are going to be ready at that time. I think that some people are going to hesitate at this time, but then when the sun rises again, things will move forward. And so I think, with anything, there are things that happen. You look at other situations like, I guess it was that day in 1987 when the stock market fell, and then 9/11 and things like that. It does bounce back. So I think this is the time to really manage your relationships and take care of the people that you work with, and then the rest will come. When the floodgates open, as Barry said, and when things start to move forward after this.
David, do you see this impacting property values? And if so, for what type of a period in your area?
Absolutely. So throughout the areas we serve, to Barry's point, we are all under, very similar circumstances with limited inventory in that first-time home buyer price range. And it is the first-time home buyer that bought, 5-7 years ago that is moving up, and so on and so forth, continuing that cycle. So, so long as there's an opportunity for them to move up, and so long as there's an opportunity for property values and inventory to remain, somewhat low, if not stable throughout the, kind of that middle band price range, then I think we should remain relatively stable in the price ranges throughout Western and into Detroit, Michigan.
The rest of you, I'd love to hear your thoughts, quickly on the impact of pricing and the time frame that might be impacted.
No, I agree. Different market, but I think we have very similar situations going on that David and Barry talked about low inventory, especially for those first-time home buyers. And so I think, again, in the right now working in this virtual environment, there's not going to be a ton of new inventory that's going on to the market while those conversations may be happening. So I think, again, we get through this. a couple months period of time.
Yeah, when you say we get through this, right? Because we're all saying kind of when we get through this, but okay,
Yeah.
how long is through this? You know, is that 2 weeks because that's what my father-in-law thinks, or is that 3 months because that's what the U.S. military thinks, or is that 6 months?
Well, I can comment on that from here. If you're paying attention to what's going on out there, and I know everybody on this call does, is that I trust the impact of what we're hearing from our National Association of Realtors, the economists that I've listened to, that they're looking at what I said earlier, the spring market being sometime around June, July time frame. I think we got to get through. I think the first, in fact, I read an article yesterday. I can't remember where it was, but the first and second quarter are going to be painful for us as the world turns.
And Barry, really quick, I just want to understand what you're saying. So you're saying the spring market shifts to June. When would that typically start? So how much of a shift are we talking?
Well, we're talking about 2 months, maybe 3 months. I think you have to right now. We all know that we go through cycles in real estate. We know you got the winter market, you got the spring market, you got the fall market, you got the summer market. And what's really happened over the time, and I'll only speak for our area that we cover here, is that the built-up demand still exists. I don't think it's going to have any. I think initially there may be fear come into play where people who are trying to sell their home may just want to get out of their home and get the best deal they can. But I think on the bigger scope, I think that it's going to turn back into the type of market that we're all used to. And I can only speak for myself out here that our pricing is still going to be up. I'll give you a prime example, just recent. We had an open house when we could have it. We had 28 offers on this home. The first offer failed, so they put it back on the market. We had 30 offers on the same house. So at the end of the day, what you're beginning to see is that built-up demand is not going to go away. People still want to buy houses. It's just that right now, the wait and see attitude, in my opinion, under the current environment that we're living under, is going to slow it down, and people are going to delay right now making that commitment. And some people are going to take their homes off the market because of fear factor. They don't want people through their house. They don't want to deal with that. They just want to be in safe haven. They want to be somewhere where they can feel comfortable and not disrupted. In the relocation business, the RMCs that we're doing business with are still doing business. It's just maybe it's being done in a little bit different way where our communication has to be a lot more in sync, and they were paying a lot of attention to what's going on really around us. And I think that's what's going to drive it, Ben. I'm not an economist. I can only say based on what I believe, if we get this under control, our focus is on, or it should be, to get people the treatment they need, to give them the level of service they need to get better, to give them confidence that we are all in this together. I think that it doesn't have to be a political statement. That's a reality. We have to be helping each other through this process, and we have to show people that we believe that things are going to get better. Fortunately, in some cases, we're dealing with things that are going to take a while to get people to feel better about them.
I've got some really some good comments coming in here from a friend of the program, Joe Fick, who's been on the show. He's also a realtor in California right now. He's got a series of comments. I'm just going to put them all up here, and I'd like you guys to respond. Joe Fick, we have to help our clients right now who are buying. Be sure to dual app with lenders. Every lender's loan programs are changing fast right now. Non-QM, QM, Fannie Freddie appraisals, VOEs, rate lock issues, MBS volatility, city reports, etc. I don't even know what half that stuff means, but it sounds serious. We have low inventory market. Rents are higher than mortgage payments, and we see many come off the sidelines. We will see international buyers come here even more than in the past, in my opinion. He was talking to me about that in California, especially. I was in a home last Sunday. They got 11 offers. Every market is different. I just went under contract in 48 hours, which is really interesting to me. I'm not seeing that kind of stuff quite as much in Michigan, but David, you know better than I would. And then somebody asked him, Aaron Flores says, does your state have an addendum for COVID-19? And Joe said he just did his first one. So do y'all have addendums for COVID-19? What the heck does that even mean? And what do you think about the rest of the stuff he said? And I'm going to give everybody else a chance. David, you want to respond to any of that stuff we just heard?
Yeah, so I'll start with the addendum to the buy and sell agreement here in Michigan. Has been provided by the Michigan Realtor Association that, in essence, places a hold. It's kind of standard contract language that does include some specifics about the shelter in place directive from the governor, the start of the mandate, and what the party's obligation should be to move forward, and the timelines under which they need to move forward. So we are seeing that is now available. As a company, we are advising our agents to use that addendum. Should they be working with clients who choose to contract within the next foreseeable time frame. Secondly, to Joe's point about the lending landscape, changing very quickly. VOEs. One thing that really stuck out with me as I was discussing with one of my trusted mortgage lenders is that that is becoming a little bit of a challenge to them. Not everybody has the organizational backing behind them, where VOEs are maybe handled by a third party or some offsite organization, and they're seeing that is becoming increasingly difficult to obtain that. So interesting perspective on obtaining the dual approvals and really ensuring that that really shores the bets that the client will be able to secure financing for the property.
Ryan, what are your thoughts? And also, is this COVID-19 addendum? Is this a buyer's addendum or a seller's addendum, or what is it even for?
Yeah, so as David mentioned, we have one that was provided to us by NYSAR, so it's being used it's available and used across the state. And again, protections for the buyers and sellers as they're going through this due to the circumstances related to, like you said, shelter in place, if anything changes with an individual's financial situation, things of that nature. And so, to Joe's point as well, I mean, I give a lot of, I think his ideas are wonderful. I mean, again, you always need to be that trusted advisor for your clients. And I think it's great to protect your clients from the lending side of it. Just as we're sitting here having a conversation, how quick and fluid things are changing in the real estate market from our perspective and on the brokerage side, the same thing is happening on the lending side as well. So I think it's a great idea, as he said, to walk them through that process and to have them talking and working with different lenders if that's what's best for that particular client.
And Tim has actually given us a virtual tour right now of his home. I appreciate, in the spirit of virtual tours, I appreciate you taking us for a walk right there. Are you seeing any kind of first of all, are you plugged into a power source? Second of all, are you seeing any anything like this? Do you have a COVID-19 addendum?
Yes, I am, and that's why I chart.
I think you're cutting out a little bit on me there.
We did just have. Oh, I'm sorry. Can you hear me?
Yep, I got you now.
Awesome. We are seeing this. We do have an addendum in place now that basically a buyer can add in, that if something were to happen, there are so many days a transaction can be for closing. It basically says until they're able to see the property in person that the transaction delay the closing until they are. So it is in place to protect our buyer right now. So it is something that we.
Okay, and then Barry, are you also using those addendums as well?
Yeah, well, they just came out, and it's a great question, Joe, to end statement. Yeah, it's important that we allow them the opportunity. It just came out from our multiple listing service that this was going to go into effect. So we do have an addendum, and I have communicated that addendum to all the RMCs as of yesterday so they could see what the intent of that addendum is and explanation as to how to use it. And why that's important is all of us on this call know that working with the RMCs, they have their procedures, but we also still have to maintain our own integrity through our own state laws as well. And this gives us both an opportunity to protect not only integrity of the client, but also to protect the companies that are doing business with that client. So I think it helps us stay, again, ahead of the curve. I think it's communication. And I applaud our industry and all of you on this call for taking the time to really see this as an opportunity to really understand the value of what relationships really are about, even though Ben can mute me anytime he wants to call. But I had, like he just did. But I do think it's important that we are utilizing the tools, and I keep going back to following the guidelines of what we're being asked to follow, and at the same time making sure that those people we do business with understand exactly why we're using those tools.
Barry, and all kidding aside, it really is a pleasure to have you on, and I want to give you a big virtual hug right now. But really quick as we're wrapping up, because we are going over, but we have so many smart people on here. I wanted to ask you all and just go around the horn kind of quickly there. I wanted to ask you all: do you see initiation slowing down? How much do you see initiation slowing down? Let's say as a percentage over last year, for the next 2 months. Let's say. I'd love for you to give me a percentage. Be so bold to give me a percentage.
I think you're going to see. I'll just speak for myself. I think it remains to be seen, Ben. I think that's a tough one to answer, but I really believe that initially, as we and I'm going to try to be brief, but initially as we work through this dynamic of change that keeps changing every day, I think we have to be patient through the process. And I think right now, what I said earlier, we're still seeing a lot of activity in the marketplace compared to what it looked like same time frame, just the same time frame last month. I think a lot of people are going to try to take advantage of the moment, but I also think what's going to happen over the next couple months is the slowdown. And I think the RMCs, and I'll just give you an example, with Boeing shutting down for the next 2 weeks here, and I'm sure most of you probably read that press. I think what you're going to see is some psychological fallout to where people are just not quite sure of where to spend their money and how to save their money to make sure that they're prepared for the next step. I think right now that'll cause about, I'm only speculating, but I'd probably say 20 to 25% over the next couple months. You'll probably see, and in some cases, depending on area, probably even more than that.
All right, so Barry's at 25. Dave?
Yeah, I've been tracking about a 25% increase or decrease as well, through this month, and I think it's to Barry's point, they're the large industries that have the volume that we would normally work with are staying put right now. So it's time will tell throughout the next several months on how that picks up, and quite frankly, how much pent up demand there truly will be for us.
Tim, Nowak, over under 25%. Over under 25%.
I'm going to say over. I'm going to say 30% plus, maybe even higher than that. I've been speaking with a lot of our relo agents, and several people have put their moves on hold, canceled home finding trips last minute, even as late as 9 p.m. The night before travel. So I'm going to say over 30%, at least for the next 30 days.
Ryan, Watroba, over under 30% over the next 2 months.
So I think I'm gonna say 25%. So
Say under.
right there on the under. There we go.
Right.
Yeah, no, yeah, absolutely. No, I think it's again, I think it's a fluid situation, and I think that the traditional way that we look at these initiations and how people, what we may, there may be some folks that want to start the process, they're not able to come to town, so we may be working with them a little bit differently as we watch this situation unfold.
Nice. Okay, wonderful. Well, thank you all for joining Love and Relo today. Thank you so much for bringing us real estate perspectives from your metropolitan area and your state. This has been really wonderful. I have so much respect and love for all of you. Thank you so much for being a part of it. For those of you who are watching, keep an eye out for Love and Relo. Tomorrow will be gone because we are going to be doing a private invite-only happy hour for our past guests. And then we are going to be, hey, you're not supposed to laugh, guys. It's absolutely absurd. You're supposed to keep it.
Smile.
And then Thursday we'll have Megan Harless, who is the military spouse who kind of kicked off the whole global household goods reorganization. She will be with us on Thursday. And then Friday, we will be having another virtual happy hour, but across multiple time zones, including our friends in Europe. So that will be a lot of fun. So stay sane, stay sanitized, and stay happy, and protect your mindset out there. Thank you, everybody, for joining Love and Relo.